Last time we spoke about this idea of near-death experiences. Now, the yesod here that we're trying to bring out is not just to watch people who went through difficult times and came out of it. Okay, that's obviously not the kavanah here. We want to bring out an important yesod concept to see that everything that was brought down already in the Talmud, in the Chazal, especially in the Zohar, mamish word for word, everything seems to be exactly what these people speak out. There are a couple of things not, but I'll speak out later why. That's also not. But b'yesod we find that these near-death experiences that we obviously have only been able to see in the past 50, 60 years, the number one guy who started this whole trend is someone by the name of Raymond Moody. Okay, in the 60s, he's the one who wrote the first book of Life After Death, as he calls it. And he has, he has many, many cases over there. He was just starting the beginning of the rungs. Nowadays, I told you as of 20 years ago, there were over 30 million cases of it, 12 million in America alone. And this, obviously, by now, there's millions and millions of cases. And you don't make up, as of 20 years ago, there was 13 million, not 30 million. 13 million cases of it. You don't make up these types of ideas, okay? It's obviously not like this. This person especially, I think it was a Talmud of her, this Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she herself was an atheist, didn't believe in God at all, but she investigated into it with hundreds and maybe even thousands of people, if I'm not mistaken, thousands of people. She wrote books on this stuff, and then, like I think I mentioned it last time, if I'm not mistaken, God has a good sense of humor, Kadosh Baruch Hu sense of humor. She herself went through one of these near-death experiences. This Kubler-Ross person herself went through it. By then, she was already sold. That's a fact. And that's what she writes in her book. Whoever wants to listen can listen, and whoever doesn't want to listen is in for a big surprise. And that's the yesod here. Someone who wants to take it can take it. You can't make up things like this when you're talking about this many people. And obviously everybody has their own nusach, everybody has a different way of thinking of things, but there's no comparison. Everybody has their own ways. But the statistics. Let me just say a little bit, again, Chazal background, which I didn't mention last time. Things from Chazal, and then from there we'll be able to mention a few stories, and then we'll see a few videos. Okay, that's what we'll try to do in this time. First of all, we find in the Gemara in many, many places that we have this idea of life after death. And you have to know very straightly so that a sworn atheist very much believes that we have obviously something that makes us alive and makes us think, but there's no difference between our body and our neshama. There's no difference between our body and our neshama. They're all the same. When the body dies, just like a donkey goes inside, and just like the person who's an atheist is a donkey, and they're all in the same place, they all go to the same place. The way he is when they're dead, that's the way he is when he's alive. It's all the same thing. There's no real difference between. There's no such idea as a separation between the goof and the neshama. Everybody in this room obviously knows. We, of course, don't believe that. We, of course, know that the goof is a levush. It's a dressing. It's something that dresses on top of the neshama. It's something that's nifrad echad me'asheni. It's one that separates from the other. And we're only here as a temporary basis until afterwards. I mention this because there's one video we have here which I'm not going to show. If you want to see it afterwards, you can record it and watch yourself. The reason I'm not going to show it, it's only in Hebrew, is there's a guy who used to be in the Knesset by the name of Yossi Sarid. I don't know if anybody knows who Yossi Sarid is here. Do you know who Yossi Sarid is? A bunch of Americans, huh? Okay, chutz again. He was a Meretz guy, a person incredibly anti anything that had to do with religion. A guy who, they always have, the Knesset always has one of these guys who, have their ups and then falls and ups and falls, and Zot Hashem Lapid is on the next derech. Also the fall. They always have these guys who up and they never make it, Baruch Hashem, because Hashem has a way of taking care of them usually. So Yossi Sarid was also a guy who was very, very anti-everything, and he was also a very strong atheist, doesn't believe in anything, like many of the unfortunate Knesset members. Kadosh Baruch Hu should give him a kapara. But he himself was interviewed one time on a radio station, and within the radio station, where the guy was talking to him, he asked him, even in a passing question, any experience that you ever went through that's a memorial type of experience that you went through? And he goes, yeah. And he started telling him about a near-death experience that he had. He was going up the stairs, and suddenly he dropped, he fell, and he was there, and they brought the ambulance, and this, and the whole time, he saw his body underneath him. He saw himself on top, and his body underneath him. And he experienced the whole idea, and he was able to see his wife and this, who are very, antsy and this, very antsy about what happened. If I was married to him, I wouldn't care. But anyways, yeah, that's what was. He saw all all this action that he was still allowed to, the people were there, his kids were there, etc. Until he was able to come back. Until, for some reason, Hashem decided to put him back in his body. He died a few years after that, just so you know. Now, you would say now the person on the radio said, and he said, okay, let's talk about the next subject. The guy on the radio said, oh, one second. You know, I've heard about these ideas, but coming from you, this is big stuff. Because you are not going to make this stuff up, because you don't believe in any of this stuff. So he actually said that. He said, he goes, look, it's true. My ani ma'amin, what I believe and what happened to me don't coincide. But everybody has free choice. I can decide to believe what I want to believe. I want to believe what I want to believe. And I don't have to believe this garbage. That's basically what he said. I don't have to believe it. I don't think it is. Doesn't make sense. But the guy said, but what about, I don't know what to do. He said, you take the story, do whatever you want with the story. I'll do whatever I want with the story and leave me alone. That's basically what he says. I have it all in Hebrew. If you want to see the context, I got it from Rabbi Daniel here. He brought it to me. It's not so long. It's about 7 minutes or something like that, 7 or 8 minutes. But you see the extent of a person, and this is the point why I'm bringing this out, is the nakud of the difference between us and a person who doesn't believe in anything is that he was saying, the neshama and the goof both exist and they both die at the same time. There's no separation. So this disproves that whole theory. The second you can show and prove by these near-death experiences, there's nothing to prove. It's a fact. It's just you don't go to 25 million people and you say, ooh, maybe they're all making it up. It doesn't work like that, right? The fact that the goof and the neshama can be two separate things is a very solid proof for what we've been jumping up and down trying to plead to tell people all the time that people don't want to believe. You understand this idea that the neshama is not necessarily a connected entity. The goof, it's two totally separate things, and that's why when you die, or when a person dies, right? When a person dies, it's automatically separated from him. It automatically separates from him. You understand this nakuda that you're saying? That's why these things, that's the importance of knowing these stories, because they bring out in its full luster the idea that there is Olam Haba, Gehenim, what we're going to speak about in the future, what it looks like and what things are around. It brings out the idea that the neshama is all that we are working on, and that's our ikar focus in this world, and that's why we're talking about this subject. You understand? It teaches us why we're here, in order to do that. And that's why he was very strong about trying to deny anything about it. So let me just bring a few quick chazals. I'll try to do it fairly quickly. First of all, we find in Yerushalmi, the Yerushalmi in Yevamot, brings that the first 3 days that the goof is nifred from the neshama. We spoke about this once. Also, we see the idea that the ruchot, the Gemara in Brachot speaks about the ruchot know what's going on in this world. It talks about a guy who got in a fight with his wife, and what does a good person do when he gets in a fight with his wife? He went to the Beit HaKvarot, he went to the cemetery. He went to the cemetery and decided to sleep there. She threw him in the doghouse. He had to go to sleep in the cemetery. And while he was there, he heard some ruchot talking to each other, and they were deciding where to go, and she was trying to take him. I'm not going to go through the whole story. It's about a half a page of Gemara. But we see this idea that even after death, they still seem to be aware of what's going on in this world. There seems to be some type of death. The Gemara in Shabbat, and Kuf Nun Bet, says, Meitim yodim ma misaprim lefaneim. They know what you speak about them. We all know there's halacha, you're not supposed to wear tzitzit when you're in front of a met, because they're aware of what's going on. You're showing them mitzvot. Rav Elazar ben Reb Shimon. Now, Rabbi Eliezer, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the famous Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, we all know Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, right? And he's Sephardi, knows who Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is. He had a son also, Reb Eliezer. He was the one who was in the cave with him. He was an incredible man also. Just to be sitting there for those years where Reb Shimon Bar Yochai already makes it. But interestingly enough, the Gemara Bava Metzia and Pei Dalet brings that he was also a tax collector afterwards. I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but anyways, people didn't like him. And whatever. He had a lot of different stories about Rabbi Elazar, what happened. But kids are there. Over there, the Gemara does talk that he had a certain death. He died in a certain way over there. And he was in an attic. He wasn't even buried for a while. He was in the attic. He needed to be locked up in the attic there. And whenever people had she'elot, they'd go to the door of the attic, they'd knock, and they'd ask a question, and he would be answered. And he wasn't alive. He wasn't alive. How is that possible? Because this tzelem, which we spoke about in the previous year, the tzelem, the image of the person, the neshama, of course, was able to still respond, because Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon, we're talking about Rabbi Eliezer, who was able to respond. So you see, there's still this idea of the neshama being around the goof. That's the nakuda we're trying to bring out here. In the Gemara in Mod Katan and Chafei, Rabbi Chiva, Rabbi Yehuda, Chezkiyahu, they all went to visit their kvarim and they would speak to each other from the kever. The Gemara talks about the Gemara in Tuvot and Daf Kuf Gimel brings that Rebbe would go back and make kiddush at his house. So you see, a dead person has shaychut, connection to his house, to his kever, to his tombstone where he's living. He's still connected to the Beit HaKvarot in the cemetery. It's not a good place to sleep at night. You never know what could happen because there really are spirits that are going around there. That's A. Or in a person's house where he was nifter, it seems to be somewhat of a connection. The Gemara in Shabbat and Kuf Nun Bet brings that when they unburied Reb Chia, he gave them tochacha. Leave me alone. What are you guys unburying me for? Why are you doing that? The Gemara Reb Chia seemed to be still doing okay. Another Gemara, which is a famous Gemara, an important Gemara, once again, the Gemara in Baba Batra and Daf Yud brings down the famous case with Rav Yosef, after he was niftar, he went up to the next world, and his father, Rabbi Yeshua, wanted to know what's going on up there. What does it look like up there? And the famous words that he says, Olam hafuch ra'iti. The Bali must bring it, but it's such a true statement. I think about it all the time. Olam hafuch ra'iti. Rabbi Yosef spoke out that I see an upside down world. He sees that everything that's on the bottom, Masha tachtonim ba'alyonim, Masha ba'alyonim and ba'tachtonim. The big famous people, all the ones that over here you get to see that person in this, they're the ones who are on the bottom, right? They're the ones who are on the bottom of the bottom. And the ones who are on the bottom over there are on the way to the top. Us little people, all the people that make it to a shiur, that are able to push themselves, to be able to learn, to be able to get whoever heard of us, whoever knows our name, whoever knows what we are, those are the people up there. And all the losers are all on the bottom. All the people that get all the kavod here, all the people that are being chased after, right? People bury some celebrities in a gold coffin, right? In a gold coffin. Some dodo brain black singer that doesn't know a thing for life and gets in a gold coffin for some type of thing. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the people, he was considered like almost a godly type of figure. It's incredible. But that's how it is. But in the next world, we all know what's happened. I happened to think about it because someone told me that they have some raya. There's a whole idea of people selling themselves to the Sitra Achra, to the devil, and he did that also, and that's why he died early, because they said the Sitra Achra came to take him, and this. Okay, you can look it up and Google it. I don't want to get involved in these things. But I'm just saying that you have this idea of things going up on top and things going up on the bottom, and that's also this hochacha that everything has a connection. Okay, like I said, there's a lot of rayas here. I don't have to bring every single one of them. I think most of you know. One last nakuda, which is also important, is that in the past, when you would talk about the idea of olam haba, the next world, people would believe you. It wasn't something that was a big leap of faith for them. It was something anashim pshutim, understood. There's something to do. Nowadays, where people are stubborn or very akshani, they're very set in their ways. People don't want to give in to be able to listen to someone above me. So therefore, sometimes Hashem levels things out. He gives us more of an opportunity to have free choice. So that's why He gave us this, if I could say, a present that we call technology to a certain extent. It's a present that we're able to have these near-death experiences. They didn't have them in the past. They could believe without them. They didn't need them. We who are handicapped, we who are stinted, we need to have these near-death experiences, which they didn't have, in order for us to be able to realize. After you hear these things, I don't even understand how a person can stay an atheist. It's very hard to understand. But Lamaisa, you see people do, right? People are still there. So at least it gives us more of an opportunity to work on it. Okay? That's that. Now, what we spoke about, just so you know, what we spoke about basically in a nutshell, is we mentioned that the Zohar writes that a person sees an Or Gadol, he sees a big light, which we said has some relevance to the Shechina. We also mentioned an important factor, that the Zohar even writes that everybody sees the Shechina. Everybody sees the Shechina, just what happens is that for the Rishayim, for the bad people, oh, you want to ask me? I'm sorry. You want to ask me? I forgot.
I was just wondering, when someone dies, they drive where the house was.
They drive what?
They drive the land close to the house, right? When someone passes away.
Russia?
No. When someone passes away, the Chevra Kadisha, when they drive the whole thing, passes usually at this close to.
Yeah, here I don't think they do it so much. But you're saying that, there would be connected because that's where he is. Kilo picking up the neshama, huh? They're picking up the neshama on the way. But we say, that's what we said in Aveilut during those 7 days. The neshama's there during that day. He goes back and forth. You're coming to be menachem the neshama, not only the people. Because he does have that thing. So that's why it would make sense that that's what they would do. Over here I don't think they do that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they would do such a thing. In other words, for the neshama to see the goof and be able to connect. Anyway, so we mentioned there's a few different things. So this big light, the big or gadol, which is the Shechina. We just said for the Rasha, when he sees it, he gets a lot of agmat nefesh. It becomes a painful experience. It becomes something that hurts. But in the beginning, it's very warm, it's very nice, it's very comfortable, it's very assured, everything. It's a very ensuring type of feeling. Before Shadvarim in the Zohar and Parshat Vayechi, Parshat Naso. Okay? That's right? Yeah. Parshat Naso, etc. Okay, that's first of all. Second of all, we also mentioned that a person sees his whole entire past. That's also written. He's able to see his whole entire history of everything that he saw. B, C, we spoke in length about also that you see all your krovei mishpacha. A person sees his relatives, all the relatives, his old relatives, the ones who are not alive, that is, right? The ones who are not alive, who passed away, they come to greet the person. If they have some connection to upstairs, at least, they're able to greet the person. That's 3. Number 4, we mentioned that it's also brought down that you can see your goof. The Zohar brings mefurash that the neshama is on top of the goof, at least for a certain period of time. Like we said, 3 days, 7 days, changes, etc., till 30 days. We spoke about this, I'm not going to get into details. But Al Kapanim, we see this idea, all these phenomena were all written 2,000 years ago. I'm not coming to prove anything, I'm just trying to point out that we see an incredible consistency with everyone's story together with the fact that everything works out. And last but not least, we also spoke about when the or, which the Zohar speaks out, is not an or, a light like this light. Obviously, it's not a type of light like this. It's a re'iyah, it's a seeing that you connect to, that you're able to feel. You feel certain comfortability. The word or is always used in the words of Kabbalah, in the Kabbalah Sfarim. They always talk about orot. They talk about lights because that is the most metaphysical thing that we have in this world. The most spiritual, physical thing we have in this world is light. Because light, we can't travel the speed of light. We cannot get there. And if you go the speed of light, you're able to actually affect time, so to speak, because it's above time. Light, to a certain extent, is above time, so to speak. Right? So therefore, we see that the idea of light and all that light has to do kind of can be effective to be in more in the spiritual worlds. Okay? That's that idea. Okay. Is what you want to speak it out? No, it's true, right? Huh? That was his point, that it's a fourth dimension. Anyway, so that's that. Okay. Now, the common denominator, which you see with most of these people, is they all say that they're going through a light, through a prus door, through some type of corridor, and they don't just speak to them, they speak to them in a telepathic way. When they hear things, you don't hear with your ears, you don't smell with your nose, you don't see with your eyes. It doesn't have to do with that. Everything is can't be described. I don't know how to explain it. It's just something that happens. And the answer is that, what we understand is like a telepathic way of understanding. When you do something telepathically through your brain. And the answer is because when you don't have physical senses, when you're kol kulei metaphysical, when you're ruchani, there's nothing to be physical about. You just connect to the idea without any type of thing. There's a riboy of ava, of love, you see the krovei mishpacha, etc. And you feel a certain type of consciousness, etc., etc. Okay, there's different types of things. Like I said, I think I mentioned this last time, I remember. There's a few stories. I saw one video, which I don't have it here, I wouldn't mind getting it, of a woman who's blind from birth. She was blind from birth. She doesn't even see black, she says. I don't see anything. She doesn't able to see anything. And she was, when she was married, they got in a car accident, and she died, and she saw everything clear as day. She was able to describe, she didn't know colors, but she was able to see that this was her. She only knew it was her body, because she felt the wedding ring. She knew where her wedding ring was on her finger, and she had to fill it. And she saw that, and she realized, wait, that's me. That's why. She finally was able to see herself. She was able to describe herself afterwards. That's something you can't play games with. And they have a video of her speaking. I told you I don't have it. If I can get a hold of it, I'll try to get it. Okay? But I'm saying she was able to see everything. She was able to see the people working on her and this, pronouncing her dead. Okay? There are a lot of examples. There's one scientist who died in a chemical explosion. Be careful. He didn't die. He became blind in a chemical explosion. He also went through a near-death experience. And he was able to describe a number of things about who was sitting in the waiting room. He was able to see the people, relatives in the waiting room crying, maybe people not crying, don't know, it depends, right? He was able to describe a number of things which nobody could do. He's even able to see things in a far basis. Okay? Now I'm going to say 3 or 4 or 5 stories, and then we'll do the videos and we'll stop. Okay? We'll do with that. Okay.
They all say they saw the warm light and the good things, but there's no experience of Rashaim that saw Gehenna or something. Okay, there is going to be a little bit, like we'll see in one place, that sometimes people get bikoret, people get tested or things like that. But that is one of the nukudas I mentioned. There's an idea that there's also,
Malach HaMavet. There is Malach HaMavet, and there's also Gehenna, or seeing ahead of you scary things in a pachad. Now, most of the people, at least the ones I have seen, it could be some that have it, some don't, you don't really hear them speak about that. But the answer is very simple and straightforward. These people came back to life. They're not the ones who ended up staying there. The ones who ended up staying there, those would really be enjoyable to interview those guys, but it's a little bit hard to do, right? You can't really get to them, unfortunately. But those are maybe one day we'll figure it out. Technology's advancing. You never know. We'll be able to get there one day. We'll get there. But these people, most of them came back to life, whether it was within a certain amount of time or period. And therefore, they never really saw the end of the tunnel. They never got to the end of the tunnel, right? They saw the tunnel. They were getting there. They heard the voice speaking to them. And then eventually, most of it end up turning back, right? Because they're the ones who came back to life. So these are not full stories where you can get the whole entire picture of what's going to happen there. The only way to get the full entire picture, you have one of two ways: or to go there, which I'm not inviting anyone to do that, or to come to the future Shurim and Blined will speak about it. I choose Plan B. Personally, but it's up to you, right?
But they were not, the 25 million were not all tzaddikim. I mean, some...
Correct. That's what I mentioned. I mentioned, the Zohar says everybody sees the light. He says even Rishayim, even Rimach Shamo, the Rasha, everybody sees it. What happens eventually is the Shechina turns into a kitrug, a negativity for the person. It becomes very bad for the person. The person realizes how bad he is, and the Malach HaMavet comes, and then it's mitzaref and he gets bad things. You will see that a lot of people saw a Beit Din. They had a Beit Din and they had a judgment and things like that, and then it'll come back. There's one story which I don't know if I'll get to today. I'll speak about it next week, about unbelievable story that he had a Beit Din and all that. There are people that had such things, but I'm saying to get a full thing of going to Ganem, you're not going to come back. The guy's not coming back. He's finished, right?
You've got the Gemara in famous Gemara in Sanhedrin.
Yeah.
It tells about what was happened to the three Rashaim here.
The what?
It tells you about the three Rashaim. Titus, Bilam, and Yom.
There's going Gittin, yeah. Gittin and Vav, yeah. We're going to speak about that when we speak about on Gehenna. We're going to speak about what happened to them. But the Gemara says, you're asking how the Gemara knew? The Gemara knew. The Gemara have no questions on it. I'm saying, how do we know? These guys on the computer are not going to know. But I'm saying, the Gemara knows what happens with Gehenna. I'm going to be telling you what happens. I'm saying. There's Midrashim about what Gehenna looks like, the 7 levels, and what happens there. Also, Olam Haba. Say that much we know. But
somebody who's in a coma, they would automatically get it.
I would have said not, but there are a couple stories which I've heard that people had a coma and they did feel it. I think they feel it on a lower level though. That's what I think. But apparently these people in a coma, sometimes they get it. Obviously it depends on their pulse, right? It's usually people that lost pulse and this, whatever, their heartbeat stopped and things like that. But yeah, different levels. Okay, let me mention just a few quick lashonot. One woman says, I knew that I was dead. I'm telling you just word for word a number of things, but I couldn't do anything about it because nobody could hear me. I saw my body underneath me, and I saw many doctors giving up on me. I was very depressed. It was very upsetting to me, but I didn't want to die. I was looking at them, I didn't want to die. Suddenly, I saw a pale light. Slowly but surely it was getting stronger and stronger. It's very hard and difficult to describe what this light was. I don't know how to explain it, but it wasn't like a light that we're familiar with, until suddenly it surrounded me, and I started to get very confused. I didn't know exactly what was going on. It started to actually speak to me. I started feeling like I was in the middle of a test, in the middle of a type of test. But even though I was in the middle of a type of test, she says, even though I still felt a feeling of love, of warmth, of security. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain, and that's where she stops. Another person by the name of Susie Holda, a woman who died because she was having trouble when she was giving birth. She was having hemorrhaging. Did I mention this last time? I don't remember. I don't remember if I said 1 or 2 stories. I remember. She said there's similar things. I saw my body underneath me, and there were people surrounding me. Then I saw a light that was coming. I felt a feeling of warmth and security and etc. I went into the tunnel, and I saw at the end of the tunnel there was a very, very strong light. I started walking towards it, and I really wanted to get closer and closer until suddenly I started to remember that 1 second, what am I leaving behind? I'm actually leaving. Now, if you remember, we spoke about it, I think it was last year or 2 years ago. We said one of the ways that a person usually dies is they get to this and the neshama automatically wants to go home. He wants to go back to where he came from, and slowly but surely that's how the person ends up dying. It just goes to upstairs. These people, a lot of times, they just somehow, one way or the other, ended up deciding to go back. Okay, she says, if people knew what death was like, they wouldn't be so scared of death. That's an important thing to point out. I had a choice, and I was finally given a choice whether to continue in the light or go back. I decided to go back, and suddenly she fell zapped back into her body. Another guy by the name of Fried says, sounds Jewish, right? That they gave up on me, and I was supposed to have an autopsy, but the autopsy was pushed off for religious reasons. I think the family was pushing off, so you see he was Jewish. And as a result of that, I started seeing a ball behind me. I didn't know what this ball was. I started seeing a light ahead of me and a ball behind me. And in the end, I got thrown back into the ball. And I think he decided, or it was decided, that what he meant was the Kadur Aretz. It's referring to the earth. Kilu was flying way above the earth. He was way out of it. That's what it sounds like. And then he ended up finding himself back into the earth. Another story of a person who was walking to get water in his office, and on the way, suddenly he crashed down on the floor. Why? He had afterwards, obviously, figured out he had a ruptured appendix, which could kill a person, obviously. On the spot, he just fell to the floor and just was conked out. He was out cold. He said, suddenly I was walking towards the water, and suddenly I feel myself on top of my body. He suddenly saw his body, and he felt so much more free. He says he kept going. He just kept going, but he didn't have to open the door this time. He just went through the door. That's what he writes. He said, I went through the door, and I was able to go right through it, and I got into this pink, he says it was a pink mist, which was around me. I can't describe it. It was a very feeling of security, of warmth. It was a very good feeling. It was very strong. Nothing was hurting. I felt everything was very fantastic. There was no one there, but one thing I understood, and this is why I quoted it, because he has a different thing, I felt like the light understood me, Hevinuti. You understand? It was with me. It was something, not only did he love me, but he understood me. He understood what I was going through. It was something that, first time you feel, some of us feel alone, right? But as Hashem, you don't. I hope you have a wife that doesn't. But, some people feel alone. They don't know. No one knows me. And suddenly you felt someone was behind me. One more case. Yadati, I know that I was dead. I saw myself on the surgery table. I saw myself going through a certain light, etc. And then the light started getting stronger. I didn't understand what was going on. It was like a 3D experience, he says. I just saw things like that. The light was speaking to me, and it started talking to me about what I did with my life. Did you actually do things positive or not? I started seeing my whole life pass in front of me. Every time, this is going to take a couple seconds, so I should do this now, actually. Right? It was very real, it was very realistic, almost like that I wasn't able to explain it. Okay, now that is a number of...
That's a quick question.
Yeah.
If it's relevant.
Yeah.
How many of these people...
You'll do this, the code is 1. Okay.
Apart from this, I read that in. Do any of these people make big life changes after they have?
So one of the things you're about to hear now, there's two in English and one in Hebrew, by the way. 2 in English, 1 in Hebrew. The one in Hebrew has captions underneath it, and he definitely made proper changes because of it. But it seems like a lot of people take it to a place where it's the 2 non-Jewish ones for sure did, yeah, like you'll hear. But I hate to say it, but I've seen a number of these. These are only a few of them, but the Jews are less than the Goyim. The Goyim do a better job of this than the Jews. They definitely make a change. Now, with the Goy, look, I could blame Jews anyways, but Jews know that to make a change, it's 1, by the way. You have to make a much bigger jump. So by the Goyim, it usually means they say interesting things like, I'll start being good to people and being nice and being good to family. Like, okay, yishkach, I appreciate it. Like, thanks a lot. Like, it's not such a massive thing. Yeah? You want to put it in your discount? Okay, you want to do it? I mean, I have it here anyways, I think. Say again, you what?
It might be a big thing for them to be nice to people.
You're saying, I understand what you meant. There's one more story which I really want to say, but it would take to the end of this year because it's a detailed story, which is a famous story. I actually have it here also, but it's all in Hebrew. So I'll speak it out in English. If you want to see it in Hebrew, I told you, I don't mind leaving it or to leaving it on. It's not going?
Where is it?
Let's try the next one. You tried both?
Where is it? Come on.
Go to the PC shortcut, the shortcut thing, and then yeah. Okay, there is one story of Nachshoni who has. Let's see if you're thinking. No, it's on now. Let's see. One second. Yeah. There's a guy who I'll start with this one. You're gonna have to crowd around the screen. I feel bad. There's a guy named Nachshoni. It's him. This one over here. He's a very, very good story. Excellent story, but it's all in Hebrew. But I'll go through the details of the whole story next time because it's going to take till the end of the shir. So you guys wanted to watch this, so I'm going to leave it. Are you able to see the screen here or not? It doesn't work so well. What? Can you zoom? Yeah, 1 second. I'll make it louder. One second. What? You making it louder? Yeah. Let me just go in here. Let me just.
Or Bible or divinity. In 1976, I was trained as a neuropathologist. For psychiatrist, as a neuropathologist. For me, God never existed. I never.
Ready? Okay. I'm just going to play. Ready? This guy's a Russian guy who had. Yeah, just watch. Everybody can see, right?
Believed in God. I never believed in.
You got the camera? You zoom? Does the camera sees or no? Let's go to this chair.
Or Bible, or divinity. 1976, I was a lady from Texas, and I tried to leave the country many times, but I didn't have such a help. This lady tried to help me, and I became in trouble with KGB. Because my work, I worked on adenosine triphosphate, it's a neurotransmitter in our brain, and with the conjunction of oxytocin, I discovered several things, and I was a scientist, and KGB didn't want me to go, so that's why they decided to kill me. That's how I got into another dimension of my life. I was standing on the sidewalk, ready to depart to New York, waiting for a cab, when a car ran on the sidewalk and hit me. I flew 10 meters and I fell and then ran. The car runs over me. My friends and relatives took me to hospital, and the hospital staff, friends of mine, and 2 other professors constated or declared me dead. They put me in morgue, in a freezer, and 3 days later they took me out on Monday. It was Friday night, and on Monday morning they began my autopsy. And these 3 days being out of my body, seeing everything what was happening around, seeing myself, my body, seeing my birth, my parents, my wife, my child, my friends. I saw their thoughts. I saw what they were thinking, how they, how their thought moved from one to another dimension. It was an incredible experience. I was in darkness, in total darkness, and this darkness was pressing. This darkness existed not beyond, but existed within. What I want to say is that darkness was pressing, and I was in the middle of despair, and I didn't understand why and how this darkness existed. Where was I? And I understood I didn't have a body because I didn't feel it. But then I thought about light. I went through that little hall into light. But light was more powerful, more burning. I mean, you cannot compare it to anything. No word can explain it. And this light was so burning and going through flesh. But I didn't have a body. That was the most interesting part. And I was scared of that light. I thought, where is that horrible darkness? Go to shade to save myself from this light. What is that light? I don't know. I mean, it can be called light of God. It can be called light of life. But light is light and darkness is darkness. And then, as a psychiatrist and scientist, I didn't think about that. The only thing was that I was in light. We were not raised in Galway. You know, Soviet Union, we didn't go to church. We didn't have... There were people who went, but they were some kind of limited people. we thought. I mean, we thought they didn't know better, that there is no God. But during that 3 days being in morgue, in freezer, changed all my life. To begin the autopsy, they began to cut my chest. That was the first incision. Then I opened eyes. So when I opened eyes and he saw the pupils were convulsing, I'm becoming smaller, to say simply. He saw that it was reacting on light. It means it's life, and they put me back into hospital and began resuscitation. My lungs were collapsed for many time. I mean, long time. I was on respirator for 90 days. I mean, it's not that it happened fast, but the life came back. And what they discovered was that life was there during the autopsy, but it wasn't that all organs worked. I mean, it was hard work for 9 months being under the recovery. It didn't happen immediately. I mean, the life was there, but it doesn't mean that I could survive, if not doctors who helped me to regenerate my health and organs. When I came to life back, a lot of different experiences happened, and I experienced a lot of rejection, a lot of fights with the reality of others, but nothing could change my mind. I knew my destination, I knew my way, and I decided to leave the country. And again, this lady from Longview, Texas, helped me to move to United States, and we came to Texas, and we continue to live in Texas still. Sometimes things are beyond our grasp, but I don't try to explain it all, because I know and I believe that God knows better, and I believe that I don't need to be explained. And why it was shown to me, and why it's me chosen to be, it wasn't question, and I don't care about that, honestly. I care that it was. I deeply believe in God of love, and God is love. And I believe that God created everything for betterness and for incredible future if we don't go in it. As a psychiatrist, as a neuropathologist, for me, God never existed. I never believed in God.
Now this one is also a good one. Just at the very end, he has one thing that he sees a woman and she doesn't have sleeves. She's wearing clothes. So I'm going to cover that part. Don't think that it's besides that, it's fine. Can you do it? Just put a paper on it. I'll give you a paper.
Before this, I'd spent 20 years in academic neurosurgery. I thought I had a pretty good idea how the brain works and how it generates consciousness. I heard occasional near-death experience stories, and I was certain that there would be some brain explanation.
Eben Alexander is a Harvard-trained neurosurgeon. He put his faith in logic, in rational thought. Then, in 2008, he spent 7 days in a coma. Now, he's a believer. As a neurosurgeon, has this experience changed your thinking about life?
It has totally changed everything about my thinking.
Most people have some idea of what happens when we die. If you do indeed believe in heaven, it usually involves white clouds, bright lights, mountain tops. Well, Dr. Alexander is a man of science and of medicine. Well, he says he's been to the other side, and now he's back to tell us what it was really like. What you saw, or what you felt, is God. Is that your definition?
Yes.
Were you a man of faith before this?
Before my coma, I had no belief whatsoever in a personal loving God.
Adopted as a baby, Eben grew up in a conventionally Christian family.
If you would ask me before my coma, how much would a patient who was extremely sick and should have died from a severe case of bacterial meningitis, how much would they remember? I would have said nothing. They would not remember a single thing.
That all changed when this life-saving surgeon suddenly found himself facing his own mortality. November 10, 2008. It didn't really start off as being very good, did it?
No, it was basically like being struck by a freight train. Woke up at 4:30 in the morning, had severe back pain, like nothing I'd ever felt before. It was a very severe meningitis, and the CT scans showed that it coated my entire brain. There wasn't any part of my neocortex that was left unscathed.
For 7 days, Dr. Alexander was in a coma. He was all but lifeless, completely unconscious. Yet he experienced a consciousness that defied all his years of medical training.
Here was this beautiful melody and this light spinning closer and closer. It opened up as a portal into this gorgeous realm that was verdant, waterfalls, colors indescribable, and millions of butterflies flying through a very ultra-real scene. And then there was a warm breeze blowing through that was like the breath of divine.
In the hospital, his doctors were losing hope.
My physicians were telling my wife that basically she'd be raising our sons alone. My 10-year-old son, Bob, had heard that, realized it was very bad news, came running into my room, pried my eyes open, "Daddy, you're going to be okay. Daddy, you're going to be okay. Daddy, you're going to be okay." As if he said it enough, it would make it true.
So your son was calling you back?
I had to come back. I had to claw my way up out of that very deep hole and somehow do whatever was necessary. He was pleading with me.
On the 7th day, against all odds, Dr. Alexander awoke. By medical standards, he made a miraculously quick recovery. But nagging the doctor was how to explain what he'd felt and seen. Was it just a fantasy before death? Was it your brain basically telling you you're about to die? And it's a nice way of shutting down all the systems and making it a pleasant way to exit.
Well, it's very important to remember that I had a severe bacterial meningitis that had greatly damaged and destroyed my neocortex, the part of our brain that makes us human, the part that allows for any kind of conscious experience. So that with that amount of destruction, there was no way to have a dream, a hallucination, a fantasy, a confabulation. Those things could not occur because that part of my brain was gone.
It was one vivid image seen by Dr. Alexander that finally convinced him that what he'd experienced was real.
There was a beautiful girl beside me on the butterfly way. I can remember her face so perfectly, these sparkling blue eyes and light brown hair and this loving smile, and she never said a word, but her thoughts went right into me. You are loved, you are cherished dearly forever. There's nothing to fear. I knew her face so well, but I'd never met her in my life.
This is the woman Eben saw. Her name is Betsy. After Eben was adopted, his biological parents went on to have more children, including Betsy. She died in 1998. They never met, and it was only after his coma that the family sent him this photo.
And it was the very same girl who had been on the butterfly wing. And her face in the picture was almost mocking me, like, do you finally get it? I saw things I couldn't understand, couldn't explain, and I figured someday there would be a brain-based scientific explanation. Now I know there's a much easier, simpler, more straightforward explanation. That is that our soul is eternal, and our spirit lives forever.
She was a sister. He was adopted.
She died.
She was died. Yeah, she died. That's his real sister, whose biological parents, which he never met because he never was raised by her. I do have one more. It's up to you guys if you want to do it. Want to just stop?
No, continue.
I'm just asking. It's up to you. You want to stop? Should we stop?
Yeah, enough.
Enough? Should we stop? I'll watch it. I think it's up to you. Whoever wants to go can go. The last one is, I'll show one more. It's about 5 minutes. It's in Hebrew, but there's captions in English. It's a very good one. You fell off a cliff and that's whatever. He was closer to like I said. It's good. It's a similar description, but at least that's the. Whoever wants to leave can leave. You can say whatever you want. I'll do the last one, then we'll just stop. If anybody, next time I have one more story, but we'll move on to the next subject next time. No, it's all right. I'm not going to say it.
נסענו לאכול בחדר אוכל של NDEs. סיימנו לאכול, אחרי האוכל קצת, אני הרגשתי מאוד כבד, מאוד עייף, ואמרתי לו, אני לא מסוגל לנהוג, אתה רוצה תנהג אתה, אין בעיה, תיסע קצת, אני אנוח בינתיים באוטו, ואחרי זה נגיע לאיזה מקום תעצור וזה, אני קצת אתרענן ואני אחליף אותך בנהיגה. הייתי עייף מת, תוך 2 דקות, הייתי בחלום העשירי, ישנתי, נרדמתי כמו מלך. בזמן הזה אני שוכב ככה, יושב, ופתאום מתעורר ספונטנית. זה היה בדיוק שנייה לפני תאונה. זו תאונה שחרותה לי טוב. אני זוכר את האוטו עף לתוך התהום, וזהו. כלומר, לא ראיתי הרבה, כי זה שניות, הוא נסע לזה 100 קמ"ש, וזה שניות, זה לא מצב שאתה יכול לראות מה קורה ולשים לב פרטים. באותה שנייה ראיתי כמו מסך שחור כזה, ופתאום הרגשתי שאני יושב מול סרט, אבל לא סרט שאתה רואה בטלוויזיה, אלא סרט מוחשי, כלומר שאתה מרגיש אותו. כלומר, אני רואה את עצמי מאז שאני קטן וגודל, ואני רואה את כל הסובבים אותי. אני רואה את אח שלי ואת ההורים שלי, את השמחות, רואה את כל הסרט של החיים שלי, מאז שאני תינוק עד הרגע שאני מת. כלומר, ראיתי גם את המוות שלי. מה זה ראיתי את המוות? ראיתי ממש כמו בסרט את המודעת אבל שלו, את הפרצוף של חברה שלי, שהיום היא אשתי, את הפרצוף של ההורים שלי, את הבכי שלהם, את ההתאבלות עליי, הכל. הרגשתי כאילו שיש לי איזה דו-שיח עם הקדוש ברוך הוא. מה זאת אומרת דו-שיח? לא ישבתי מולו ודיברתי איתו, אבל היה פה שאלה. שאלו אותי שאלה, שעכשיו אנחנו רוצים תשובה. אמרתי קודם כל שמע ישראל, ואז אחרי הסרט הזה אני אמרתי, כלומר, אני מוכן מעכשיו, מהרגע הזה, לקבל על עצמי, לשנות את כל האורח חיים שלי, את כל הצורה שהייתי חי בה, להיות בן אדם יותר טוב, להיות יותר טוב לאנשים, להיות יותר טוב לזולת, להיות הכל, אני מוכן לעשות הכל, רק לצאת מפה עכשיו. וכשהוציאו אותנו ושכבנו על אלונקות, אז הגיעו גם כמה מילואימניקים שם לג'יפ, והם חיפשו את הנשקים שלנו, מכשירי קשר, לראות מה נשאר. קיצור, הסתכלו בפנים, הכל קרוע לגזרים. מכשירי קשר, הרובים, הכל, לא נשאר כלום, הכל נקרע. המתכת הזאת כמו נייר נקרע. מילואימניק אחד יכניס את היד שלו ככה, לתוך האוטו, מה הוא מוציא? מוציא התיק הזה ככה. הכל נקרא לגזרים, התיק הזה נשאר עם אבק. הוציא אותו ככה, שאל של מי זה, אמרתי יותר לי את זה, תפסתי התיק הזה ככה, שמתי אותו עליי, והצמדתי אותו ומאז הוא איתי. והתפילין האלה מאז אין להם הפסקה ממני. כל בוקר לא יעזור כלום. אני יודע מה המשמעות שלהם היום, אני מבין מה הציל אותי בכלל. התפילין, יש לי פה תפילין ותהילים, ומאז אני לא אשכח את ההבטחה שהבטחתי, אני מאמין שזה לבורא עולם, שאני אשתפר לטובה, והתחלנו לשמור שבת. האמת שזה היה לא קל, אשתי גם חילונית, היא בית חילוני, לא שומרים שבת, וגם אצלי בבית לא שומרים שבת. וזה קטע מאוד קשה, להתחיל לשמור שבת ולוותר על דברים שאתה רגיל לעשות כל יום, ואתה לא מבין מה תעשה בשבת? מה תעשה? בסדר, תלך לבית כנסת, מה, איפה המוזיקה, איפה הטיולים, האופנועים בשבת, ניסע על השטח עם החבר'ה. היום אני מרגיש שלא חסר לי כלום בשבת. אני מרגיש התעלות כזאת שהשבת נכנסת ואני הולך לבית כנסת ואני יושב בבית כנסת ומתפלל. אני יודע שאני מדבר עם מישהו, כלומר אני לא מתפלל לקיר. מישהו ששומע אותי, מישהו שהציל אותי, שעזר לי, שהוא שם ואין ספק. וזה מדהים כמה הנס הוא גדול. שיצאתי גם בלי פגע. לצאת עם חתיכת שריטה במצב שאוטו נראה ככה, זה מדהים. ואני לא בחור דתי, אני לא אחד שהולך עם כיפה ולא עם ציצית ולא... לא איזה אחד שגדל בבית דתי, לא כלום. אחד שכל החיים שלו שבת זה היה בים ועם החבר'ה וזה. חשבתי שהחיים הם... אתה חי ואתה מת. וזהו, כשאתה מת זה שחור ונגמר. מאוד קשה לספר את הסיפור הזה לבן אדם חילוני. בוא תסביר לו שראית את החיים שלך בסרט, בוא תסביר לו שניצלת בנס כי אמרת שמע ישראל, בוא תסביר לו את זה. אני אגיד לך טוב, תשמע, אולי חלמת, אולי איבדת הכרה, זה נראה לך, לא יודע מה. אני בחור חילוני, בחור שגדל בבית חילוני. אומנם סבא שלי, אבא של אמא שלי הוא צדיק היה, אבל ההורים שלי והלאה זה כבר חילוניות גמורה. אין לי שום אינטרס לכלום, אני בא לספר פה סיפור שקרה, סיפור ששינה לי את החיים, סיפור שהוא אמת ואין בו שום דבר חלומי או משהו לא הגיוני. אומנם זה נשמע קשה לקלוט את זה, אבל זה סיפור אמיתי שהוא פשוט מדהים. אתה יכול להגיד היום בוודאות, יש משהו אחרי המוות? בוודאות יש חיים לאחר המוות.